Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hi, I'm Flight Lieutenant Chris Sully and welcome to the latest Royal Air Force Inside Air podcast. In the last episode, we met some of the 78 Squadron team based alongside their civilian air traffic control colleagues at the National Air Traffic Services, or NATS, Centre at Swanwick. We're back in Hampshire again today to find out more about some of the unique work they do there.
We are looking to detect and identify possible threats to the UK airspace. That could be threats similar to like a 9/11 incident, an aircraft that's out of comms, or even things, you could look at sort of Russians, LRA, those kind of things that you see on the news a lot. So those are the kind of threats that we're looking for.
You can work up to 2 hours if it's quite a low traffic intensity, but we tend to stick to an hour just to make sure everyone stays fresh because you don't know what's going to come out that day.
Yes, drones. People could turn out the bane of our lives and that type of thing because of the volume of incidents that drones are, and the magic word is accused of being involved in.
As usual, we'll also reheat a few stories which could have slipped under your radar, and we'll be finding out who's under the hat this week with AS1 Ben Russell.
Hardest part of your job?
It's finding, so when we attend these exhibitional events, it's knowing the output of that event, so how successful it was. So sometimes we don't see results for 1, 2, 3 years down the line, and we measure success from that.
Last time around on Inside Air, we caught up with some of the 78 Squadron team based at the HQ of NATS in Swanwick, Hampshire. We're back at Swanwick again today to meet more of the 78 Squadron team and to dig deeper into their work with the air defence capability, the distress and diversion cell, and how they integrate military traffic with the busy airspace around Northolt and Heathrow. All of that and the London helicopter routes. First off, let's hear from the boss of 78 Squadron, Wing Commander Ian Evans.
We've talked a lot about flight paths and how we do things jointly integrated in that way, and we've talked about the about the flight operations, the air traffic control and airspace management. But the bit we haven't touched on, and you're going to talk to the team today about, is our air defence capability and output. So when we closed RAF Scampton some years ago, we picked up that resilience for our sister squadrons, 19 and 20 Squadron up at RAF Bulmer, and again form part of that ASC2 force output. And it's very important that we are in this building and have that close relationship with NATS, so that in any air defence incident, whether it's some sort of a practice or whether it's live, that first and foremost, defence of the UK is critical. But falling quickly behind that is to ensure that we do that in the safest and most expeditious way that we possibly can. So you'll see it played out as you talk to the team today about our air defence output and our air defence capability. People listening may think that is purely a military output. And of course, in many ways it is. But it's underpinned by the relationships we have with NATS and ensuring that we keep them informed of what we're doing. We try not to affect commercial flight as much as we possibly can, but there will be lots of points where we intersect with commercial flying during an air defence incident. And whilst we practice as much as we possibly can, that interaction on the day is built up through years of relationship building, of practicing and refining what we do.
And trust, presumably, as well.
Trust is absolutely key, especially between the supervisors, or we would call the MOM, the military operations manager. Those are the key interlocutors between ourselves, civil, and then as we reach out of the squadron, then into wider air and into that air defence network, all the way, of course, up to the engagement authority as the Prime Minister.
So a QRA is called. Things bang up and running to be as quickly as possible. Then it's up to your teams to integrate that and for the world to carry on whilst that's dealt with.
Yeah, well, even before that, a lot of the information that is garnered to be able to make that decision to fire our Typhoons out and our rapid reaction aircraft out will start almost generally always with NATS and the civilian colleagues coming to us to say that we've spotted this, we have an issue. We will then report that information on, and we will support them in trying to get an aircraft maybe back in comms, for example. But that information that flows for that chain generally starts with civil, comes into us, the 78 Squadron. We then work with our sister squadrons, and then the whole aircom chain, the air defence chain will work through its process. So even before the jets are airborne, and of course after the jets are airborne. generally either between 19 Squadron or ourselves, in conjunction with NATS, that's on us then to execute that plan.
OC 78 Squadron at Swanwick, Wing Commander Ian Evans there. Flying Officer Austin Bernand is part of the Air Defence Team based at the National Air Traffic Services, or NATS HQ, on the south coast. He's an identification officer with the 4-Flight team.
So 4-Flight's role is air defence and plans. So the plan cell you'll talk to today, but air defence, how we do that is that's for the surveillance side, so the backup for RAF Bulmer. How do we do QRA, things like that. The resilience side for that for the UK.
So QRA being quick reaction. We'll come back to that in a second. Your role, your job title is an identification officer. What does that even mean?
So identification officer. So effectively, it's the first line of defence for spotting threats over the UK airspace. We do that by using the radars across the UK, so military and civ radars. We are looking to detect and identify possible threats to the UK airspace. That could be threats similar to a 9/11 incident, an aircraft that's out of comms, or even things, you could look at sort of Russians, LRA, those kind of things that you see on the news a lot. So those are the kind of threats that we're looking for.
What would typically be the first notification that you get? Would it be one of the civvy controllers? Would it be one of your military colleagues? Or how would it typically work?
So it depends what type of threat it is. We work a lot with our NATS civilian colleagues here, and they work with the MIL guys here. So they give us a lot of information on how, civilian traffic is looking. But that's, where we really do support the air picture a lot is by looking for those threats that could be, for example, LRA or something that isn't necessarily tall.
LRA being
long range aviation. So that's, that could be threats from Russia, etc. So that's what we're looking for, and we do that using our radars.
So when somebody listening to this sees something in the news or on social media about a Russian Bear or another type of aircraft coming into the space, it's you guys that are dealing with that in the initiative.
Yeah, so we're looking, we're either going to identify it or we could be told by our NATO allies. So we're working within that wider NATO picture as well. So we could get pre-warning, for example. Yeah.
So I guess it depends on what the nature of the threat may be that's coming in. But if it was an aircraft that wasn't in communication and was just sort of continuing towards UK airspace, what's the next thing that would happen?
So it would just it would get thrown up the chain of command. So I'm an identification officer. It would be reported to the surveillance director at RF Bulmer, and then up to the master controllers to the NatRep, and they effectively are owning that air picture across the UK. They are making the decisions on how they're going to deal with that threat, and then they would then go up all the way to number 10 if they needed to.
You mentioned RAF Bulmer. How does Bulmer fit in with what happens here at Swanwick and Vice?
So in terms of 4-Flight, we kind of sit outside of the controlling aspects of 78 Squadron. So RAF Bulmer are the main CRC, so the Control and Reporting Centre for the UK. If for whatever reason they were to be denied, for whatever reason, we are the individuals within 4-Flight IDOs. We will be able to be stood up at a moment's notice and continue to produce that recognised air picture, so that we can survey and monitor the UK skies.
Before you moved here to Swanwick, not you personally, the squadron moved here to Swanwick, were you based at Scampton before?
No. So I came straight from 20 Squadron. So I did my training at RF Shawbury and then went to RF Bulmer at 20 Squadron. So that's the training squadron at RF Bulmer. I then went directly to 78 Squadron from there. So I've spent all my life, most of my time here.
Yeah. But in terms of the squadron, the work that is done there now, did it used to be done at Scampton?
Yes, it did. Yeah. So effectively, we are what has taken over from the Scampton role. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm going to ask a really silly question now in a role like yours. What does a typical day look like for you here at Swanwick?
So it's, we're not doing the surveillance picture 24/7 here like they would be at RF Bulmer. So it's quite nice for IDOs here. We get a bit more time to do other kinds of jobs, sort of supporting 4-Flight development. We do a lot of training. So one of the big aspects of 4-Flight is to support the training of area controllers within 78 Squadron to do the QRA actions if RF Bulmer were to be denied. As we talked about, we have IDOs here and we don't have weapon controllers here. So we need to upskill area controllers. Area controllers are very good at keeping things apart. We're now teaching them to bring things together effectively and be able to continue to provide QRA functions if needed, if RF Bulmer were denied.
That's a great description. So in its simplest terms, that's what you're doing.
That's the simplest terms. Yeah, there are, a lot more complexities to it that we do teach, but that's a simple term for it.
what are you looking for in a good sort of recruit, somebody coming into full flight compared to somebody who's maybe an area controller? What would you be looking for? What sets them apart?
So people in full flight, you've got to have an interest in UK air defence. You've got to have an understanding of what threats are happening, across the world, at any moment. You kind of, need to be a bit more sort of, on the edge, have an understanding of, how the chain of command works, different policy and doctrine, and, have an understanding of that so that we can enact it if needed.
You used a brilliant description ago of air traffic controllers keep things apart, you pull them together. What does that training involve? If somebody wants to move across from area control and decides they want to go down this route, what does it involve?
So training area controllers to do that sort of weapon control function, we do it in two different ways. We do it through sort of theory-based lessons, but then we also do sims, so we're able to simulate different scenarios and just give people a bit of an exposure as to the processes that they would have to go through if there was ever QRA that they would have to deal with.
So a fairly full-on thing, and presumably when you come into work, not knowing what each day is going to bring, most days probably not too bad, and then suddenly you get the call and the heart rate must go up a bit.
Exactly, yeah. So as I said, we're always on readiness. The idea is here to provide, we call it the Swanwick extended task, if required, if Bournemouth were denied. It can be at any moment's notice. We are always on readiness here.
I've heard a phrase, Andrew, you can use the phrase as well, NASOP. What is NASOP?
So that's the National Air and Space Operations Centre. So they're there to sit there at the higher chain of command above RAF Bournemouth, and they are managing any QRA incidents. They're always there to support and liaise with Number 10 if they needed to keep the UK safe.
So with the closure of Scampton, as we just mentioned, there's now an increased pressure, increased tasking, if you like, here at Swanwick. What does that look like? What does it actually mean? What does it involve?
So we have what's called the Swanwick Extended Task. We call it SET. That is effectively how we can support RAF Bournemouth if they were to ever be denied. That involves having IDOs here. So we've always got IDOs on readiness, but it also involves, as we've discussed, fulfilling that weapon controlling element as well. We've talked about upskilling area controllers to be able to provide that controlling task in QRA, and effectively it means that we can continue UK air defence operations at 78 Squadron.
So it wouldn't affect anything in the long running. It would be a seamless sort of handover.
Yes, yeah, and we train for it. We train for it on a day-to-day basis through both simulations and within those theory-based lessons as well.
QRA, quick reaction alert, when people hear of that in the news and they see maybe things again on social media, they think of Coningsby, they think of Lossiemouth, maybe Bryce to an extent. How does Swanwick fit into that picture?
So Swanwick fits into it in quite a major task, really. As we've discussed, we are the backup for Bournemouth. So if Bournemouth were denied, we will be stood up to support QRA. But then on a day-to-day basis, Swanwick area controllers will support QRA. The UK has a very, very busy airspace. Area controllers are experts managing that airspace. So 78 Squadron will support that if required.
The Swanwick military area controllers also play a huge part in the air defence setup, as West Bank area controllers, squadron leader Ryan and Flight Lieutenant Matt explain.
One of the unique things that happens here at Swanwick for the squadron, obviously, is the air defence role. How important is it to be co-located with the team at Swanwick, looking after the civvy side of things? Presumably, when something happens, it could well be them that notice it first, that an aircraft's maybe not communicating with them or something.
Absolutely. The big theme, and we pass this on every single people we speak to, whether that be visits or whatever it may be, is the joint integrated approach here at Swanwick, working alongside NATS. We've got great relationships across the board, whether that be in AC, so in area control or terminal control, TC. We've built a great rapport, great friendships, and we're also co-located as well. So we normally put the military banks with our civil counterparts. So, for example, where Matt and I work on West, you can turn around and directly speak to the West Civil Sector Group Supervisor, literally 3 or 4 feet away, and you can just have that face-to-face. From an air defence point of view, you're right. There are various incidences that can kickstart an air defence scenario, one of which may be as simple as a loss of comms, in which case, normally 1 of 2 people are going to know about this. That's civil air traffickers are going to know because they're trying to raise an aircraft that's not responding, or distress and diversion. The D&D cell, they're going to get notified because there's aircraft trying to go on an emergency guard frequency.
What does it feel like when that call comes through and you go, okay, this is something out of the ordinary, this is as working on the air defence side of things, what does that feel like for you?
For me personally, it's support to the UK, and it's just generic wider support really. When that call comes through, at the end of the day, we have a job to do. We've got procedures to follow. They're pretty slick across everyone. We've streamlined them. We're always looking to optimize and make things better, make things quicker. Constantly, but we have to do this hand in glove working with NATS as well. We want to introduce the procedure. Does this work for you as well? And then we work with NATS procedures teams to make sure that works, to have that joint integrated approach. So if there is a loss of comms, they have a procedure that after a certain amount of attempts, they then come over to us and tell us. They don't just point out an aircraft, they give us a flight strip as well to make sure there's no ambiguity, saying this is the aircraft, corresponds with this flight strip, out of comms for X amount of time, and then we'll escalate that as necessary in accordance with our procedures. IFACs give civil controllers like a 3D view and separation standards. That gives them speed readouts. It shows which aircraft's quicker than the other one. And they even have functions of if they choose to do something with one aircraft, it shows them what the impact it could have by doing it. So it's very clever.
So, Flight Sergeant Steve Barrett, I'm Flight Sergeant A35 Plan Cell and the Deputy PACOM.
Steve, thanks for chatting to us this afternoon. When we talk about a plans cell, what are we actually describing?
Okie doke. So the plan cell, I like to see it as there's two hats to be worn. We have the long-term planner. So we're looking right out in years with regards to what traffic impacts the Swanwick military controllers, and how our capacity manages that expected traffic.
When you talk about traffic, you're talking about CV, military, a combination of both?
Majority, probably about 99% is military, but we do dabble in the civilian traffic as well, very, very loosely though. And then the second hat is the A3 hat, which is sort of like really getting down into the weeds 1 week out and really understanding that traffic we forecasted, up to a year, maybe a little bit more out, and really understanding how that's going to impact our control team as well. We have different banks here on 78 Squadron. Controllers are endorsed in these banks accordingly. The staff are split amongst these banks. So we really need to make sure that the traffic we've identified and where it's operating in the UK, that we have the staff levels in those banks to meet the requirements.
So you're not getting caught out, and you're not also presumably not wasting resources on something that...
Exactly. And we're just trying to reduce that kind of like that unnotified traffic, just popping up on frequency and catching our controllers by surprise. So we just, we like to try and work out what is coming our way rather than just second guessing it.
Has the plan cell always existed, or is it something that's been stood up here at Swanwick?
We've always loosely done planning prior to 2020, and then off the back of a safety case, they really identified that we can't carry on playing catch. We really need to commit staff to identifying the traffic and when it's going to impact our team. So the air and space operations management trade, as it was back then, the profession, they were effectively stood up to create a full-time planning position. And my predecessor built the foundations, and then I arrived a few months later and kind of like took it on from there and just helped that cell grow, make all those aircraft operators aware of Swanwick military and our capacity, and that they really need to engage with us and share the information that they've got so we can create an accurate air traffic picture, basically. And again, just assign the staff, or inform the staff, of what traffic they can expect, and make sure we have got people in the right place at the right time.
What other stakeholders do you work with to make that come together and make sure that all those that need to know?
Yeah, so we have majority of our customers, of course, are RAF squadrons from all the units across the UK. But we also work a lot with the US Air Force as well. We have RAF Lakenheath, RAF Mildenhall, many aircraft operating out of those units, as you're probably aware, and they do impact our team quite heavily as well. So we've really sort of like opened up those relationships and, really strengthened that two-way communication, because ultimately they just have as many training objectives and operational requirements to tick off just as much as our RAF colleagues. So the more open and honest that they can be with us, we can obviously prepare the team to assist them as well.
What are the frustrations of planning so far in advance? Because obviously there comes a point, if you go too far in advance, things have changed so much by the time the flash to bang happens.
And so you know what? In military life, that plan changes D-1 as well. So me and the team will work really hard to try and build that picture. But as we all know, all plans don't survive first attack. So what we do deliver to the ops room, the team are really aware that the military way of life and how things can change quite rapidly, as we found out over the weekend, of course. They have to allow a bit of flexibility and adaptability with the plan as well.
You already touched on working with the Americans. Obviously, part of military life in 2025 and beyond is joint working with other nations, working with other air forces. Presumably, then when there are big international exercises happening, you must be front and centre of everything with that.
Yeah, so that was one of the great things with the plan cell stepping up, is that we're now acknowledged and that we are a key stakeholder in the execution of all exercises, not just taking place inside UK airspace, but also in European airspace as well, because what we have to offer are those units, those bases right near the sort of like the air traffic boundaries. So there are exercises that take place just on the other side, sometimes into like the Dutch airspace, for example, as we found out earlier this year. And sometimes there are so many aircraft operating in the foreign airspace that it might be a good idea just to spill into the UK airspace, just to sort of like offer up a safer area for them to work. So when I go in and engage, it's really important that I can just make them aware of our capacity and our operating procedures as well.
And presumably there are huge similarities across the board. A lot of differences, I would guess, in the way people work and air forces work.
Yeah, that's right. So, and again, it's just sort of like making sure that they're aware that we're here and that they can speak to us. And if they're not getting what they require, just by opening up those communication channels, we can work out how we're operating and just work out the best plan of action to move forward.
One of the things I'm picking up since I've been walking around Swanwick today and meeting and chatting with people is just that the fact that you're alongside, literally shoulder to shoulder with your civilian counterparts and whatever, makes it easier. And that, particularly in terms of planning, must be a great thing to be co-located.
Yeah, so for planning, definitely, but also for awareness as well. You can probably emphasize better with each other when you're face to face with a civilian colleague. They can then see, in front of their face, basically, just how busy the military control team can get. So when our aircraft are getting close to civilian air traffic, they really have a better understanding of what we're trying to achieve. And it is really, really important that we work together and collaborate well in order to execute these training objectives. We're not there to get in the way, of course. We just want to work with each other to ensure that the aircrew achieve those objectives.
Another truly unique service based at Swanwick is the Distress and Diversion, or D&D Cell. As the name suggests, it's designed to be used by any airspace user, military or civilian, who finds themselves in need of help. I caught up with D&D Cell team members AS1 Jenna Allen and Flight Lieutenant Rory Griffin to find out more.
So we provide a air traffic service to any aircraft that are in distress within UK airspace, essentially. And from that, aircraft can speak to us on what's known as a guard frequency, which for civil pilots is the UHF guard frequency, which is 121.5. Any member of the GA community can tap that in and transmit on the radio. There's a dedicated team that will be at the other end listening, waiting for any kind of eventuality that they may have. And from there, we can provide assistance to get them on the ground, get them on their onward routing, and support any emergency that they may have.
When we talk about GA, we're talking about general aviation. We're talking about everything from small private jets through to gliders and light aircraft, everything in between, presumably.
And beyond that, even we deal with the civil airliners as well, right the way up to the sort of the Airbus A380 kind of size. So we can from that room we can be speaking to and take control of and provide an air traffic service to any size aircraft in the UK.
So a pilot's flying along, they have what they perceive to be an emergency situation. There are 2 levels of different emergency they can call on there to come and speak to you.
Yeah, there's a PAN, and then there's a Mayday as well. So PAN is like the baser level of an emergency. That could be just a technical, we call it a technical snag. So something like a oil filter caption, which is a bit like when you're driving along in your car and you get an engine warning light come on. Now, if that happens while you're flying, it can cause a little bit more concern. There's no hard shoulder for you to pull into. There's no service station for you to pull into, and you can't lift the bonnet up. You really do need to be sort of looked after by that external agency, and that's what we're there for. We're a bit like the RAC, essentially, but for aviation in that sense. So from there, what we do is ask them where they're going, what their previous intentions were, because if we can get them to where they're going, if they're say 20 miles away and they've got enough duration, then we'll just keep them on their onward routing and sort of keep an eye on them. But if they're miles away from where they were meant to be, we've got the capability from the D&D cell to get information of local airfields. So depending on the size, weight, cargo of that particular air system, we can work out the best aerodrome for them to land at if the emergency is that bit more severe. And then from a PAN, they could have a Mayday, which would be something like an engine failure, a fuel leak, something a little bit more serious.
So Mayday would be something that's threatening to life and the stability of the aircraft, and a PAN is a bit more, I've got this thing and you need to be aware.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mayday would definitely be more of a danger of a catastrophic failure. Yeah.
So in terms of you're sitting in the office in the control room at some point and suddenly up pings, I'm presuming it gets busier at weekend with general aviation, with light aircraft and things, up comes a message. What's the first thing that you do?
Yeah, someone calls a PAN, we want to get out to them straight away and just acknowledge that they know that we are on the other side of that one. We want to get their call sign, confirm, yeah, we understand you've got that emergency. Make them feel safe, because in that time of area as well, they are going to be terrified. If you think there might be a danger to your life, you are going to be panicking. So just to have that other person on the side of the phone be like, look, we're okay, you're in good hands, I know where you are, I can see you. Right, what's your intentions? What's wrong with you? Do we need to land you on a grass strip? Do we need you to get you to your airfield quicker? We just want to get out and make sure they feel comfortable in taking their emergency procedures on.
You mentioned you know where they are when they call through. How does that work?
So we've got a system in D&D called auto-triangulation. That shows us if you come up on to 1.2.5 and transmit on that, it will pinpoint, as long as the radars are working, it will pinpoint down to a single road, like dirt road or house or church. We can pinpoint that directly of geographical location of where you are at that time. And we
so it's like what 3 words in the air?
Yeah, it's like what 3 words in the air, but on a map version it will show you, so we can see it really quicker than having to dial in what 3 words, and we can get it to you in about 2 seconds that you are overhead, somewhere.
Yeah, wherever it may be. I mean, one of the reasons I'm guessing pilots call is, should we say, navigationally confused, i.e. lost. So at that point, they're looking for reassurance. They're also looking for some guidance. And you can tell that how quickly will that happen?
The coverage can be limited based on terrain. If you're in a slightly hillier area, large parts of Scotland and Wales, it can be quite tricky. But with that, we use the radar picture as a backup. We'll ask an aircraft to squawk on their transponder. So, and then if they don't have a transponder, then we'll go down a bit more of a detective route of, okay, where was your last known position? Where did you get airborne from? Well, if where they got airborne from is at X and where their last known position is at Y, they're probably going to be somewhere in the Z area based on timings, and we'll look for them that way on the radar screen. But with the auto triangulation, there's high resolution direction finding. As soon as that radio transmission is made, lines populate on the screen where those lines intersect. That's where the aircraft radio transmission has come from, which means that that's where the aircraft is, and we'll provide what's known as a position fix to that aircraft.
And uniquely, one of the things that you can do with D&D, as I understand it, as a pilot of a GA aircraft, is you can do a practice call. to you guys, and actually, so that if you need it for real, presumably that gives them the reassurance and gives you a bit of practice as well, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. With the practice panel, the training fix, as it's more commonly known, it's actually part of the PPL training. So for most members of the GA community, when they're first starting out on their aviation, when they're first starting out on their aviation journey, part of the training that they will do will be to conduct a training fix on 121.5, utilising the service that D&D provide. We actually benefit from that quite considerably as well. Being in the military, there's a constant turnover of staff. And in order to train our staff, we require those training fixes to come in on a daily basis to provide that on-the-job training.
So if you've got a pilot who's newly qualified, maybe hasn't done it for a while, they shouldn't feel bad about calling 1215 and doing a practice.
No, definitely not. On our side, we might have a trainee on the other side doing it, so they are equally just as nervous as someone that's coming up and maybe hasn't done it in a little while, or is a bit rusty, or is new and they can't remember the phraseology. We do get a rough estimate of what you're trying to ask, and it might not be word for word, but we generally do know, and we will tell you. Even if you're not asking for a position, we'll probably give you one just in case. Yeah.
How unique is the D&D service that we operate in the UK, that you guys operate from here in Swanwick?
As far as we're aware, the UK are the only nation that provide a dedicated distress and diversion service from a fixed point, from a fixed cell. D&D was established back in the 50s or 60s, essentially to provide an overarching cover for any emergency aircraft, largely with a military background, but then it's grown from that and it's evolved into, I would say we deal more with the light aircraft sort of members of the GA community than anybody else. They're probably our biggest customers, whereas other nations will monitor a guard frequency. They will monitor emergency frequencies from localized aerodromes, and they still get the same coverage, but it's done in specific parts of the country as opposed to what we've got, where we've got a radar screen that can show us the whole of the UK.
So a fairly unique service, and a great one that operates out here in Swanwick. Part of the other role that you fulfil within the D&D cell, is that the right word to use?
Yeah.
Is the JRCC side. I don't even know what that stands for. What does it mean?
Yeah, so that's the Joint Rescue Coordination Centre. We work really close with these guys. These guys aren't too far from Swanwick. They say about 10 minutes away. So they are the ones that deal with the search and rescue assets, or the lifeguards. So anything that we feel like if we've got an aircraft that we are unsure might not be safe, we think something might have happened to it, we can phone up them and they can get out a search and rescue asset to them. But otherwise as well, they also work closely with us. So a lot of aircraft have ELTs or PLBs, personal locator beacons. And if one of them's going off, they get a notification, and we can then go out and search on our register for that aircraft, and we can make sure that pilot's okay. They also let us know that if a search and rescue asset's maybe going out to Hillwalker, we can inform military assets maybe that are low flying that not to fly in that area, because last thing you want is a military aircraft and a winch and pilot. It's probably not the best thing to do. They can also put in temporary airspace. So if the search and rescue asset does need a bit more space, we can make sure that everyone on military-wise is staying away from that section. We can shut down that airspace for a little section. And we can also inform any little small light aircraft that might be flying without speaking to anyone that something's going on. You might just want to watch out. So we'll broadcast that onto 121.5.
So everyone keeping an ear up. Recently on InsideAIR, we covered a joint exercise between the helicopters from Valley and the Royal National Lifeboat Institute based on the Isle of Man. So presumably that would feed into that whole process too?
Yeah, so we would have been informed about that, and we just keep an eye over and watch on that one. Yeah.
You touched on it as well, restricted airspace. When we talk about restricted airspace things, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so restricted airspace is a section of the sky that we close to any civil aircraft or military aircraft for that section. So the latest one that we've just seen, the King's birthday fly past. So in that, we decided that we would close part of London because you don't want any civil airliners flying through there, because when you've got such close aircraft, it's a danger. So we put in some restricted airspace across London and out in East Anglia, so all the jets can get into their positions, fly through London without any small little Gulf aircrafts flying through that might cause hazards, or anyone that wants to watch from above, just to keep them out of the way.
And presumably things like if there's a red arrows display, then it's the same thing, that system still works.
Yeah, so we've got lots of areas for red arrows, parachuting displays. So we've got REACT coming up, so there'll be one over REACT. Just to make sure that everyone in aviation is safe, that any displays are going on.
Then we've got VIP flights, things like the royal family. Maybe if the President of the United States is visiting, presumably that feeds in as well.
Yeah, so a big one that we definitely see is the President coming over to the UK. When the President comes over, it's slightly different. We get the Secret Service in, and they come and sit in, and they take over one of our radar screens, and they just watch out to make sure nothing happens to Air Force One or any aircraft that does come in with the President on board. So we work highly alongside of them. So if something does happen and an aircraft does get a bit close, then we can set up our quick response rate to it. We also deal with the royal families. We just keep a watch over. No civil aircraft should be going close to it, but we just like to keep an eye out and make sure that no one's accidentally, if they don't know they're there, getting in the way. So we just track that from when it departs to when it lands.
And presumably, obviously, having restricted airspace is one thing, letting everyone know that it's going to be there. How do you let other airspace users know that there's something coming up?
Mainly that would be via NOTAM. So notice to airmen, they get published well in advance of something happening. It's not always possible to provide that. If you've got restricted airspace scheduled, then you can plan for it and you can send the NOTAM out well in advance. Sometimes we have set up temporary danger areas and emergency restrictions on flying. So essentially it's restricted airspace that's been set up quite quickly. There could have been some sort of national emergency or something like that, and we're just trying to keep the airspace clear for the emergency services that are going to need to come in and out of that airspace. A NOTAM would still go out, but it could be that the NOTAM doesn't go. The NOTAM's published as the airspace is being stood up, it's restricted as it's live, as it's happening. If that's the case, then we would broadcast on all guard frequencies to let any aviators know that this airspace in this position, this radius, this altitude is temporarily restricted.
Another important area that the 78 Squadron team at Swanwick are responsible for is Northolt radar, the area of North London which borders Heathrow Airport and contains a number of busy helicopter routes. Sergeant Paul Orford and Flight Lieutenant Sophie Smith told me more about this important role.
So Northolt are heavily involved in the commercial side of air traffic. It's what we mainly support, so north of Heathrow, in and out commercial traffic, and then the London heli lanes as well. So we do director approach, we do SRAs when required.
SRAs being?
Surveillance radar approach.
Presumably you are so very close to Heathrow and all the inherent traffic in and out of that place. It must make Northolt a bit of a special place to work from.
It definitely does. You know, we're so close to civilian side of controlling. We're very sort of different to your normal military airfield. So at its closest, you know, we're 3.2 miles from Heathrow's inbound. So from an air traffic point of view, you need a 3-mile separation. So it can get very close a lot of the time. So it's having that very close connection with civil controllers, especially Heathrow directors, understanding that we know what we're doing and they trust what we're doing, because civilians operate very procedurally. Military, it's only class G, open, sort of do what you want. And so they don't really know what we're doing. So it's having that trust and building that trust with them that they know we're going to keep our aircraft safe and away from them so that they can focus on doing what they do.
And if you were to sum the job up in one part, is that what it is? It simply comes down to that, as just keeping lumps of metal away from each other in the sky? Or is it...
Yeah, you know, air traffic in that show, as I'm sure you're aware, yes. Even more so with the proximity to Heathrow, you know, being such a hub for commercial aviation, it's even more so compared to, you know, your likes of Valley, you know, quite far away from big commercial airfields. So, yeah, I definitely thought that's the primary role for Northolt.
And if you think of it in terms of, I guess, like a beehive and bees around a beehive, Heathrow is one thing, Gatwick to the south, Stansted and Luton to the north, but you've also got helicopters going in and out of London. That's busy enough as well, isn't it? So how does that work?
Sunny day at Northolt is busy. So heli lanes go straight through Northolt airfield, obviously go from north to south across as well. So sunny day, say an event's on Ascot or a fly past or something, everyone wants to go inside near Heathrow through London. Can be very busy. We don't know when they come in. So we have to always be ready and be able to control quite a lot of aircraft at one time. The thing with us is it's very phraseology heavy. It's almost like we don't do a lot of headings, level changes. Yeah. It's more we have to tell them everything correctly, all the correct information, keep your distance from people, your VFR.
VFR being visual flight rules, in other words, it's down to the pilot to see other aircraft.
Yeah.
Right.
And even more rules when it's a bad weather day. There's special VFRs, there's different separation rules for that. Got to keep everything away from each other. Much more complex. Yeah, the heli lanes is different to normal airfields.
Yeah, very much so. So, we, with Northolt, we essentially utilise a portion of Heathrow's airspace. So when we have a busy day with traffic, whether it's outbound or inbound at Northolt, that's when we take that portion of airspace. So that's when any helicopter, anything transiting our bit of airspace, if we have anything to affect, we work it, like you say, well, as much as we might know the civilian traffic into us is all flight planned, we know when to expect it. There's helicopters we don't. So, you might have a few inbounds and outbounds from Northolt. All of a sudden, you have several helicopters that are wanted to fly through Northolt or around areas where our traffic wants to be. So it can get quite complex in those situations, really.
And presumably you throw things like the police helicopter operations into that, and it makes the picture even more clouded.
Exactly. It's different categories of aircraft flight. So police, helimeds, they're all category alpha. So that's the most important. So, you might have loads of inbounds that are expecting to land, but unfortunately that helicopter takes priority.
So if you ever hear category alpha, that is presumably, as you're saying, helimed or whatever.
Correct. It's emergency aircraft. So you're talking 7700, that's your emergency sort of profile where they trump everything. If there's a higher value, even like the King flying in, that helicopter, police, Cat Alpha would take priority. So it's lots of understanding of how that operates with Northolt, which is quite unique.
It must be stressful. How long do you do on a shift where you sit down at the desk to put the headset on and take control? How long do you do before you then sort of pass on to the next controller?
It's entirely dependent on the traffic situation. So if it's quite a busy session, also depends what seat you're in, what traffic's going in and out. But probably the normal is about an hour, and then you'll have someone take over and give you a break. You can work up to 2 hours if it's quite a low traffic intensity, but we tend to stick to an hour just to make sure everyone stays fresh because you don't know what's going to come out that day.
And the other factor, beyond aircraft flying around and humans, is the weather, presumably. That must play a big role in what you do.
Yes, it does, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. So on lovely clear weather days, it's perfect. So at Northolt, we've got an ILS, so instrument landing system, on our one runway, which basically means the pilot tunes in a frequency and the plane tells them how to fly. It does everything by itself. On a bad weather day, we also have the SRA, the surveillance radar approach, where we tell them you should be at this height, but left and right is what we tell them. So it's much more, they have to trust us and what we're telling them. And that one has a much higher minimum that they can fly to without being visual with the ground or references. So on a bad day, and if we're on an easterly runway, the cloud base might be lower than what the minimum is. I was like, how do you work that? So bad weather days can be bad in that respect, but on the flip side, there'll be no helicopters flying around because it's a bad weather day. So traffic wise, we would be probably lower traffic levels, but more complexity, because the aircraft that we'd normally expect to be landing, they're having to do a missed approach, trying to divert, trying different things that we might not be able to offer. So it's trying to work with our civilian counterparts. An aircraft might be wanting to fly into us, but then we have to divert it to Luton. So it's coordinating with those, understanding how that all operates. So
how does controlling the Northolt sector compare to other areas you've worked in the past?
So I did area control before Northolt, so I was North Bank. And the difference I've seen is the complexity of the airspace and how small it is at Northolt. I was controlling on North Bank, 78 Squadron, and there's Class G everywhere. And it is really easy to just do whatever you want with any military aircraft, dogfighting in unsegregated airspace, fine. With Northolt, you have not got a lot of room to play with at all. So if you have more than 2 inbounds when you're, say, on runway 07, it's quite a heavy workload, and the different types of airspace around the area as well. I mean, the manoeuvring area we've got to get an inbound in is can't even think of the measurements. It's like 7 miles by about 4 miles, really, that it is.
Which sounds large, but then you bear in mind the speed of the aircraft and everything else that's going on. It's not very big at all, is it?
So, yeah.
And most airfields, they might have that same sort of dimensions laterally, but vertically they've got, surface to however many thousand feet. With Northolt, we have private aircraft don't like to be in Class G. They like to be safe in controlled airspace. So for us, controlled airspace stops at 2,500 feet. Anything below that is Class G, where there could be anyone flying around doing what they want. And it's an unknown environment, so it's not really ideal for them. And above us is Heathrow's airspace. So we have to request higher if we want to climb from Heathrow. It's not just a case of, there's something there, we'll climb you a few thousand feet, keep you safe. We don't have that luxury. So we're basically, once we descend to 3,000 feet, we're stuck at that. So all we can do is turn left and right. And like you say, there's not much airspace to turn. So it can get quite interesting, shall we say.
Is the word. At certain times, Northolt assumes even more significance. I'm thinking particularly of the repatriation of the late Queen Elizabeth, obviously. Were either of you working at Northolt during that period?
No, neither of us were actually working.
Yeah, unfortunately, presumably for the people working there, then the world's watching much more than usual. It must be even more pressure in what's already a pressured environment.
Definitely. And also a privilege, to be that station that does take that aircraft. It's, you've done a good job, making sure the aircraft lands safely. It's a big respect.
So we mentioned the helicopters operating over London, busy airspace, Battersea Heliport obviously being one of the centres, I guess, of focus. Where else are people heading, and then how do you route them through your area?
So routings, they can vary so much throughout the day. It depends what events on that we don't know about. It can change daily, but we look after mostly stuff coming in from the north, so H9 where Northwood is, and then down to the south. They will sometimes cross Northolt and want to cross Heathrow as well, which is quite a long procedure to sort out because we've got to speak to a lot of different agencies to be able to get them even close to Heathrow, then pass it to Heathrow Tower once approved. It is a long process. We've also got H10, which goes from east to west and back again.
Is that the one that follows the Thames largely?
Yes, yeah, well, it kind of adds on to another heli route, but we don't look after that. The ones that Northolt mainly look after is H10, H9. We work really closely with Thames Radar or Special VFR, and they, depending on our traffic situation, they will either look after those aircraft that are on the heli lanes, or we will, if we've got stuff inbound or departing. Things like Battersea, they can either come on a heli route or they'll go off the heli routes and go in from Brent, for example, north down to the south, cross downwards there, or we've got Ascot Burnham as well, and that's another north to south cross that's off the heli lanes. So there's a lot of different things that we support, can be all different aircraft doing it. They all ask for different things, and you kind of just find out when they're in the air. And the way that we work as well, so we can do these things, is we have an interactive panel that we work on for flight strips. And we can send them to each other, to Thames Radar, to Heathrow, whenever we need to, if they are expecting it or if we're expecting it. Massively helps with coordination, getting things done quicker, because if we were on the phone all the time, no aircraft would move in London.
You obviously usually watching from the ground. Have you ever had a chance to get up in a rotary aircraft and see it from the other side, as it were?
I haven't yet, actually, but hopefully that is a goal that we're trying to sort out at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. With 70th Squadron is parented by RAF Odium, so the Chinook force, the base out there, we're in discussions. Hopefully we can get that arranged.
With Warrant Officer Andy Smales now, who works as part of the Radar Analysis Cell here at Swanwick. Before we go any further, what exactly, Andy, is Radar Analysis Cell?
So it's the military group of people that work here at 78 Squadron that use the NATS data to look at incidents that may or may not have occurred, to produce radar replays and screenshots for different agencies across both defence and civil service.
So lots of the stuff we've been looking at today is active, proactive. You're not reactive, but you're looking back at and helping different agencies. You mentioned, what sort of agencies do you help with that?
So we were primarily introduced as part of the collaboration with the CAA and Ministry of Defence back in the late 90s, and we were to look at the near misses, air proxies as they're referred to, and we are the military element of that collaboration. Over at RAF Northolt, you've got the United Kingdom Air Prox Board, basically anybody that has the perception that they've been involved in a near miss, an air prox, what we will do is be tasked to have a look to see if we can see the event unfold and generate a radar replay of the incident to get in contact with other people that may or may not have been involved, because it is perception. And from there, we will have a look to see how close aircraft did get, and it's all done in the interest of flight safety. So we will produce the radar replay and the snapshots. We'll also then contact the other people that may or may not have been involved in the alleged incident, and from there we can actually pass all the information into the investigators, and what they will do in the interest of flight safety is have a look to see if we can do anything smarter, better, but there's no blame, it's just flight safety.
And that's been a big shift in the last few years, hasn't it, with air clues being published and all those things, encouraging pilots and other airspace users to be honest and open with what they think might be a problem.
100%, and that's one of the biggest things from the radar analysis cell. When we actually contact what we say aircraft 2, because aircraft 2, it could be anybody. It could be from drone operators to light aircraft to glider pilots. It's just to get their version of events. It's not that they've done anything wrong. 99 times out of 100, nobody's done anything wrong. It's just a case of raising that situational awareness. The UCAB will obviously have a look to see if things could have been done smarter, could have been done better. But also, is there an airspace issue there? Is there some things, the trends that they can then go out into the media, can go out into the GA community, just to highlight these issues, to make sure that near miss, the air prox itself, doesn't become something more serious.
You mentioned an interesting phrase a moment ago, Andy, and that was perception of things. I'm guessing one of the areas in particular, the public look up and that aircraft was about 100 feet above my head. And I'm guessing sometimes that isn't always the case.
Yeah, very much so. Like with technology now, one of the biggest things that we've got, when apart from the air prox, is we also work for other agencies such as Defence Flying Complaints. That's the RF Police that investigate the noise complaints, for instance, or physical damage to property that it's believed that military flying may have caused. So what we can have a look at is to have a look at the radar to see, was there an aircraft operating, was there a military aircraft operating at that location that the complaint's been made at that time? And from there, we can actually identify that, yes, the pilot's probably not done anything wrong. Somebody's in a house, they hear a jet go over the top, they make an assumption that it's 50 feet and that it's caused a problem to the garden or to the actual physical property. And what we will have a look at is to see what height they actually were operating. And I would, again, going back to the stats, we'd probably say that 99% of the times the aircraft have done absolutely nothing wrong. There may be the odd occasion where something's slightly off track, it's clipped an area to avoid. There may be something like a riding school, a disabled riding school, for instance, and an aircraft has just gone within that avoid, that's caused a horse to distress and what have you, and potentially throw the rider. And that's just a straightforward accident. There's nothing malicious in it. And again, the same goes for an aircraft that's flying at 1,000 feet over the top. It makes a lot of noise. People are sat there, they've got the windows open. It's a beautiful sunny day, and the noise of that jet and what have you, they believe it's 200 feet. And you know what? It's happened 2 or 3 times. We're not happy with it. We're gonna do something about it. So, like I say, that information comes from the RF Police, and we will investigate it.
You've other elements, like in working with the Air Accident Investigation Branch, AIIB. That's when things have obviously ultimately gone wrong. What exactly do they look for from you?
Yeah, basically, it's obviously when we get the notification that something's happened, and it's not just defence air accident. We also work on behalf of the air accident investigation, and they'll have a look to see if we can see the actual aircraft that's been operating on radar. A lot of the time, where the crash has occurred. Can we see something on the radar picture which is actually showing something untoward? An aircraft that's in a gradual descent, suddenly something happens and you can see the actual rate of descent increase just before the incident. And we can have a look at the lat and longs. We can actually have a look at the ground speed and as well as the height. And then we can go back and say, look, there's something catastrophic that happened, albeit a minute before it disappears from radar. we're only as good as the radar coverage. We're only as good. We try to have a look at things regarding other incidents, but if we can't see them, if it's just taken off, the radars are here for gnats and then not meant to be used for or have the ability to see things on the ground, obviously. So something that's happened at extreme low level, we can't usually see, but there have been a few occasions when you can see it. It's pretty sad because you're looking at the last flight of an individual or crew members. If it's
something like control flight into terrain or whatever in cloud.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's the ones that I've been involved in has usually been something that's mechanically. There's something that happened technical wise, and you can just see it suddenly plummet. Is probably a polite way of putting it, and that's quite sad. That information we will document it. It's quite laborious because you're looking at every single radar sweep. Every single sweep, lat long, speed, height, and that's going to be documented and then sent to the air accident investigation just to help them.
Sad, as you say, but in the long run, in terms of eliminating future accidents and avoiding things happening again, presumably vital.
I'd hope so. I'd hope that everything that we do, when we have you, whether it be an air prox, defence flying complaint, even the air accident investigation, that there's something in there that can actually help prevent something like that happening again. Like you say, an air prox, the idea of the flight safety piece is to prevent something becoming a mid-air collision. Defence flying complaints, we don't want the RAF or the Navy or the Army, the helicopters, to be given the blame because livestock's been damaged or property's been damaged because of what we're doing. So therefore, making sure that that's actually pointed out to the crews to try and avoid those areas, to make sure that it's not persistent. Yes, we know low flying's mandated and we've got to do it to be part of the operational role, but let's move to a different area. Let's go to a different low flying area. Let's avoid that particular place because enough's enough for some people, and we totally understand that.
And kind of off the back of that and tying into it maybe, and every pilot's fear is infringing some airspace or some other area that they're not meant to be in. Do you look into that kind of thing as well?
Yeah, we've done it, and that's for both communities. If it's the military that's potentially clipped an avoidance criteria, we will obviously have a look, tie it to where the actual report position is, and see. And again, it's usually members of the public who are looking at this. They're actually saying that they believe that it. And a great deal of the time, it's not. We're actually slightly above it, or we're slightly to the right, or slightly to the left. So when you actually do tie it, but again, if it has happened, the police will go, and it's not automatically guilt. And whenever your pilot have done it on purpose, we'll have a look at the software, have a look at what they've been operating under. Let's have a look at what their mapping is. Many years ago, we found out there was a technical issue with the helicopter software that was slightly off. So therefore, as far as they were in good faith, they were actually avoiding these places, but for some reason they kept clipping areas of avoidance, and it found out there is actually a software problem, if you mean only minute, but it just meant that they were clipping. It was sorted, rectified, and we've not had it again in many years, and that's probably nearly a decade. This is my second stint in the RAC, so I can fall back over sort of 10, 12 years worth of experience and seeing how much it has changed and how much it has avoided.
So we talked about infringement, we talked about clipping airspace and air proxies and things like that. Presumably you do work with the folk looking after the borders as well.
Yes, very much so. It's not just the borders, we do look after the border force side of things and National Crimes Agency. So we're actually looking at potential infringements and what have you of our airspace. Things, suspicious aircraft is the term that we use. And again, even if members of the public have complained to the police forces about this, we will also do the investigation work into there. And again, it's not good when we're actually finding people who have actually been doing and involved in drug smuggling or people smuggling and using intelligence. And then we will have a look and what have you to see if we can actually see which routes they're travelling and make sure that things are in place to prevent them in future. But also, you get somebody there that's believed that something's going untoward near where they live, and you have a look, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, they've got something there. And to be fair, it's a police helicopter operating. So, again, I've been able to look at that. We can go back and actually reassure them that, first of all, their complaint's been upheld and when people are looking at it and we are investigating it on their behalf. But actually coming back with an approach that, no, it is actually an Aeromed helicopter that's been flying, or it's a police helicopter that's flying. But then the other side of it is the ones who are using our airspace for illegal reasons, and again, breaking the rules in what they're doing, not only through drugs and people smuggling, but obviously operating without transponder codes. If you are listening, we can see you.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
You'll be getting a knock on the door.
Exactly.
Every now and again, we get a lot of spate in the news of reportings of unidentified objects in the sky and stuff. Do those calls ever come through to you? Do you ever sort of get the call to look back on the radar pictures?
Yeah, it's funny. We've had to change our phraseology. So when we used to actually do air proxy investigations and we couldn't trace the other person or other aircraft, let's say, because it's a primary contact and therefore it disappears from radar extremely low level in a place where there's no airfield to be able to contact the airfield to we used to call it was unidentified, but we couldn't use that because obviously
it's got meanings.
Freedom of information that came in, and that we've obviously got 8 or 9 times in a year we would have UFO sightings. They're not UFO sightings, so we've actually called it untraced now. Unfortunately, it's still untraced flying object. It still becomes a UFO, so therefore we have that.
Do you get calls from the public still saying, I was driving through Salisbury Plain and...
So no, do you know what? The only times I think that we've had them, it's when people have been slightly drunk, and it's been like I've seen there's red and amber and green lights flashing, and you're stood under a traffic light, mate. So there's that type of thing, but it's usually the freedom of information. Believe it or not, we've obviously done everything that we can. I would say that the way that we operate now, especially with the AirProx board, looking at the actual AirProxes, we're probably looking at maybe about 6 a year that are actually untraced. So therefore, but because we've actually got a description usually from the aircraft one of low wing single engine, we know it's an aircraft. Okay, so we've actually had the unidentified flying object removed from our title, because obviously from that side of things, if it was unidentified, we can't trace it, and if we can't trace it, we can't see it, and we can't see it, then it becomes a problem. So we have to contact people, the other people, so therefore trying to contact somebody from Mars, let's say, it becomes a little bit to try and get their
not quite so easy, is it?
Yeah.
Not quite so easy.
Yeah.
I can say one word to you as well, and it's a word I'm predicting will probably raise an eyebrow, and that's drones and people operating them, things you buy off the shelf in the local high street.
Yes, drones. People could turn out the bane of our lives and that type of thing because of the volume of incidents that drones are, and the magic word is accused of being involved in. For me, it's a little bit of, it's getting better. The reason for it is when the drone code came in, as long as people understand that, and this is the one thing that we've got to get out, if you've got a drone, make sure that you've got your license, make sure you adhere to the regulations, because actually then we are mitigating that flight safety implication piece. The people who are actually doing and operating it correctly, we're actually getting those people now filing AirProx reports in because they've done everything right. They've noted the fact that they're going to be operating in a particular area. It's usually the commercial drone pilots that do it 100% correctly. And all of a sudden we have civilian helicopters or civilian light aircraft, if you mean, going through their NOTAM area. So they'll actually file the AirProx against that particular aircraft. Again, it's about awareness. Everything's about awareness. It's difficult. People can go online and just buy one of these things from Amazon, and next news they're just absolutely flying it around and don't know that they're meant to be regulated. They're operating at 400 feet, above 400 feet. They don't know that they're not allowed to do that. Yes, it is, because we've obviously got the military side of things as well, that you've got military low flying taking place. They're operating at 250 foot, 300 foot, which is below the 400 foot. So again, we've got a lot of that goes on as well. And people are a little bit twitchy. The news is about drones that are weaponised, drones that are this, drones that are that. So the threat is real. They're not only operating £250 worth of cost, if you mean, which doesn't seem a lot, but the damage that can do. We know that if you actually fly into a person or a building, you're going to get sued, if you mean, no matter what you are, because of the rules and regulations. But you imagine flying that into an aircraft engine. You imagine taking something out with it. So that the risk is real. So it's about awareness of what you can do and what you should be doing is the thing. From our side, we've got to look at it. You've got drones that have been spotted operating near airfields. Look, just a few years ago with what happened and how much at Gatwick. Yeah, exactly. And that's there. Whether people are doing this and whatever because they think it's fun or they think it's funny, actually, it costs lives. It costs people's livelihoods as well. But the threat is real. And also, the police are aware of this. So if you get caught doing it, you're in a lot of bother yourself because you're deliberately doing something that you know you shouldn't be.
And at the end of the day, there are online training courses and free advice, and people can find that information out. So presumably you're not trying to stop anyone's fun. By all means, go ahead, have some fun with it, but do it legally, do it properly.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. So I think the CAA actually spoke to a lot of drone operators, not commercial, but just general public, and I think it was anonymous. And I think the percentages of people that didn't know that was actually quite astounding, and they've just bought it from a shop and they're just operating and they don't care. But then they've turned around and mentioned, well, the risk of getting caught's not really there because I can operate in a field. Well, it is there. The police are aware of it. They've got people on the ground to do this. And especially operating in their airfields, we've got to have a little bit of common sense as well. It is quite difficult. It's definitely difficult to police, but it's just getting that awareness out there. So
flip side of the coin, I would imagine if you take the time to do the online course and make a phone call or whatever it may be, checking the airspace you're flying in and all those kind of things, you can stay with absolute confidence that you're allowed to fly there. When Joe Public come up and say you're not allowed to do that, you can go, actually.
Yeah, but the rules, we're not talking about a lot of money. We're talking, if your kit costed £200, £300, £400, you're paying £10 to get a licence to be able to operate it properly and what have you, and we would say legally. So that's the crux of it there. And again, knowing where you can operate, that is the other key as well. And it's all part of the course. The questions are there, the information is out there, the drone code is out there, everything is out there for these people. And you get apps and everything. So you're already up to speed with, you're using your iPhone to fly the damn thing. You use an app and what have you to be able to put the information there.
As I prepared to leave the NATS HQ at Swanwick, I had one last question for Jenna and Roy in the D&D cell and Ryan and Matt of the West Bank Area Control Section.
Finally, the last question for you, either you can answer or both of you. For somebody listening to this at the moment, thinking about a career in the RAF, thinking of maybe they hadn't considered controlling before, what's the best thing about the job?
No day's the same. Freedom to make decisions. You're empowered to make decisions. And whether that be in the terminal environment, you're part of a smaller team, but the effect you have enabling frontline aircraft to go and conduct their training, conduct their ops, things like that, fly past RIAT, etc. When you see them all come home again, going, I had a massive part to play in that. And no day, like I said, no day is the same. So you don't come in going, oh, I'm going to do this again today, because it's not. And it is, you can go from terminal unit to terminal unit. So although the job is the same, locations different, procedures are slightly different, and the variety of the task is pretty huge. I'd recommend it to anyone.
And one of the things I've noticed just in the brief walk around I've had as we started this morning is, in terms of it being specialist, irrespective of rank, I've seen AS1s who are doing exactly what you said, who are taking those things. So presumably fairly on in your career, you're getting that ability to do those things.
Yeah, the amount of responsibility that junior people have here in the ops room is a lot higher and comes a lot earlier on than it does in other jobs. And I think, one of the great things is you can come here as a first posting straight from your sort of professional training, pick up responsibilities that you wouldn't get in other places. And then when you go to these other units on sort of second, third postings, you have a much broader experience and understanding of why you're trying to do what you're trying to do.
One of the things I'm picking up here today as I'm walking around is one of the real attractions about posting to Swanwick is the variety, not knowing what every day is going to be like. I'm guessing D&D Cell really sort of shows that to its nth degree.
Yeah, definitely. You could come in one day, you could have maybe one little medipan, or you might have someone that's maybe a little bit lost and maybe just needs a reminder of where he is. But the next day we could be in charge of an aircraft that's unfortunately had a mayday and crashed somewhere, or search and rescue that's not had a good outcome. It's definitely different every day, and it's such a rewarding area to be in, because you know that hopefully you've given the best chance of life to someone, or you've been that good outcome where if someone's concerned about their aircraft or family's concerned about their aircraft and you find them and they're all safe, it's the nicest feeling. Yeah.
but it's really high responsibility as well, particularly for somebody like yourself. I mean, I'm really old, so I don't care. But for you, having come straight from phase 2 training to Swanwick, and then you got your ops ticket, and then you have gone into D&D as well, the kind of variety that you've had just from a first posting is massive as well.
That must be a really rewarding and satisfying thing.
Yeah, definitely.
You must talk to other people that you maybe did basic training with and just compare what you're doing to what they're doing.
Yeah, when you speak to people, like at my old work in the co-op, you speak to people and they're like, oh, what do you do in the military these days? And I tell them, I'm like, oh, I could be in charge of an aircraft that's potentially got threat to life or something like that. And at the age of 23, they're like, wow, like you're actually doing something really cool. Like you've got that much responsibility on your shoulder and you do take it for granted. Like sitting here, I go, oh yeah, I actually do that. It's a little bit scary. You don't like to think about it too much, but yeah, it's definitely a rewarding job.
And one of the other great things about being in service with an organisation like the RAF is you get a bit of a chance to do sport, and I understand powerlifting is your thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so I do a lot of powerlifting. So I got into powerlifting when I was at phase 2 training. They taught you how to go to the gym safely. And I took a little bit of a liking for some weights and decided that was going to be my sport. So started some competitions. So if you didn't know, powerlifting, squat, bench and deadlift, and you compete. Then all 3 of those. And you try and just get 1 rep max of your highest. So started about 2 years ago now. Came from my first ever competition where I was 18th. And this year I finally made the RAF powerlifting team. And then last week I got the invite out to do the whole military service, so RAF, Navy and Army, to compete in the military service powerlifting team. So
how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, I was really shocked to be fair. So I go out to Cyprus to compete soon. I was one of 6 girls to be competed for the first ever UCAF team, which is really nice to hear. And came 4th overall in the RAF this year, so
happy days.
Yeah.
So that's something that you're going to carry on going?
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully maybe broaden it out to civil and get him to the Scottish team, hopefully.
You mentioned a moment ago you went back and saw your colleagues you used to work with at the co-op and they were surprised at the level of responsibility you had in the day job. They must be blown away by that.
Oh yeah, definitely. The amount of people that you say, oh yeah, I do sports. We're like, what do you do? Like powerlifter, like, oh, I'm not going to mess with you. It's great. And then going into the gym and lifting so heavy and seeing people being like, wow, you could actually lift something. It's quite cool. It's such a niche sport and it's nice to create a recognition for a sport that's actually getting quite big at the moment. So it's
This is Reheat for InsideAIR. I'm Corporal Victoria Andrews. The RAF is collaborating and exercising with Japan and the Republic of Korea to strengthen defence ties and improve interoperability with the Japanese Air Self-Defence Force and the Republic of Korea Air Force. Operation Hightower demonstrates the Royal Air Force's ability to project air power globally, with UK F-35s operating at extended range from the UK Carrier Strike Group. Royal Air Force personnel and UK F-35s will conduct joint activities, supporting strategic objectives and reinforcing the UK's commitment to Indo-Pacific security. Royal Air Force Reserves have joined UK tri-service colleagues and NATO partners at this year's Inter-Allied Confederation of Reserve Officers. As the world's largest and oldest military reserves organisation, it's committed to advise and support NATO on reserve matters, promote reserve service and foster professional development of reserves. This year, the focus was on NATO's recognition of reserves' contribution to the armed forces' capability and provided insights to future force frameworks in a changing global and political landscape. And 2025 marks the 50th anniversary of No. 3 Mobile Catering Squadron, part of RAF Global Enablement's support force. Originally established to support the RAF in operations, today 3MCS works globally, providing deployed catering, operational hygiene systems and accommodation management to all armed services as tasked. That's Reheat for InsideAIR.
Thanks, Vic. And now it's time to find out who's under the hat with Ben.
I'm AS1 Ben Russell, and this is Under the Hat, where we get to know an aviator in less than a minute. Name you're known by.
So I'm Flying Officer Rob Tapscott, and I'm known as Tappy.
What's your profession?
So I was a pharmacy technician for 20 years, commissioned in September as a medical support officer, and I'm currently based at recruitment and selection at RAF Cranwell.
What's the best thing about your job?
So I get a chance to go to exhibitions and talk about a job I love to do. I love the RAF Medical Services, and working alongside part-time voluntary reserves is a fantastic part of my job.
Hardest part of your job?
It's finding, so when we attend these exhibitional events, it's knowing the output of that event, so how successful it was. So sometimes we don't see results for 1, 2, 3 years down the line, and we measure success from that. Whereas I'm quite data driven, and I like to know that if we attend an event, I want a number of successful applicants from that event. So it's difficult for me to not see the success and the results straight away.
Best location you've served?
I spent 6 years in Akrotiri and in Cyprus. That was really, really good. I got a lot of sun. However, probably RAF Lynham was my best base. It was such a family, an RAF family. If there was ever a hangar bash, if there was anything ever going on in station, all the families, all the squadrons, everyone used to get invited. So it was that huge family ethos.
What bit of luxury kit do you never deploy without?
I'd probably say my inflatable pillow, or my sleeping bag. So the time machine, so they call it. Yeah, absolutely brilliant bit of kit.
And what's your proudest moment in the RAF?
Probably whilst I was at Tactical Medical Wing. So there was multiple operations that we deployed, a lot at very, very short notice. And leading the team that managed to get all of this kit out of the doors for humanitarian aid relief was a fantastic achievement. Just seeing my personnel operating around the clock just to make sure all that med kit was ready to go, and the result of that saving so many people was a huge achievement.
Cheers, Ben. That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review, subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and then join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.